Hey everybody, it's Dream, and today we have a 7-game NBA slate. I will note that this is the first slate of the tournament that the NBA is doing in season tournament, so do keep that in mind here. I don't expect it to change DFS very much though, but I could see like at the end of games teams trying to make runs and stuff like that. But overall, this should be a pretty standard slate. There are a ton of injuries as we've had a lot lately. So let's go and get into it. I will do FanDuel picks at the end of the video as well, so let's get into the slate here. So we'll start with our injury report. For the Cavs, Garland is questionable and Allen is questionable. For the Pacers, Halliburton is questionable and Jalen Smith is questionable. For the Knicks, Barrett is questionable. For the Nets, Cam Johnson and Claxton are out. Dinwiddie and Dennis Smith Jr. are questionable. For the Wizards, Gafford is questionable and Crispert is questionable. For the Thunder, Shea Alexander is out. For the Mavs, Irving and Cleaver are both questionable. For the Grizzlies, the Rose, Morant, Clark, and Adams are all out. And for the Trailblazers, Simmons and Scoot Henderson are out today. So lots of injuries, and we have a lot of questionable tags. Obviously, that's going to probably change some of this as we find out who's playing and who isn't. But at this point, we have some good options, and we're going to go ahead and start with our point guards here. So we're going to start with Donovan Mitchell for Cleveland. He is facing Indiana. He has some really good upside in this matchup. He's had some big games already this year, and this situation gives him a lot of potential. You know, excuse me. His price has risen up as a result of his play, but this matchup is really good, and it's one of the faster-paced games on the slate. I think he goes for a bunch of points today, especially if Garland and Allen continue to sit. Then we're going to look at Malcolm Brogdon, who is a core play for me. With Scoot Henderson being ruled out already, he's got a lot of upside. Now, his price has popped up as a result, but he should start today. And if that's certainly the case, then he'll get over 30 minutes and have a really good usage rate. That gives him a lot of potential on this slate. Though do keep in mind his price has popped up some, so that is a concern a little bit, but I really like his upside in this matchup. I will note that if you look at Portland, the prices for all their guys have gone up some, so do keep that in mind, but especially due to these injury situations. So Shaden Sharp is also questionable on the slate. Probable. Sorry about that. Then we're going to look at Marcus Smart for, excuse me, for Memphis. He is facing Portland, and he's actually fared really well so far this season. His price is coming up a little bit, but he still draws really good metrics for this game, and I do like his upside here, though he's been a little streaky, which he is typically. He's got a really good plus matchup here. And then we're going to look at Giddey for Oklahoma City. Now, Giddey's an interesting spot as his price has popped up a lot. SGA is out, so his usage rate is going to skyrocket. There is an expectation that Cason Wallace will also start. However, his price has already been boosted as a result of this matchup and the injury situation here, so I don't expect a ton of usage for Wallace, at least here on DraftKings, due to his price already being substantially higher. But over on FanDuel, he'll definitely have a lot of utility. Maybe in our shooting guards, Malcolm Brogdon and Donovan Mitchell can obviously play at this position, but we'll look at Shaden Sharp, who is probable, but he's very likely to play. Excuse me. His price has jumped up a lot due to his play, but with Scoot Anderson out, he'll definitely get more usage. He's had some big games and he's still underpriced, though his price has popped up quite a bit. He still feels underpriced for his potential. That said, let's keep in mind that this game should be a slower game than their normal one because they are facing Memphis, but he still has a lot of utility on the slate, and so he's definitely worth a look. Marcus Smart could also play this position. You could also consider Richardson and Josh Giddey at shooting guard. As for point guard, I forgot to mention you can also consider Kobe White, Luka Doncic, and Jamal Murray at that position. So maybe our small forwards. We have a lot of interesting options here. Zach LaVine is going to be a pretty popular option today. He is probable today. And it seems like the days that he is probable, he actually seems to do better. The Bulls have been quite a bit of a mess, though, so far this season, but he definitely has a lot of upside, and he's still cheap enough that he's worth a look here. Though do keep in mind his floor is pretty low, so that is a concern here, but he has played well, and so I like him in a good matchup here. Shaden Sharp can also be in play here. And I also like DeMar DeRozan today, who's got a really safe floor, over 30 fantasy points, and his price is still pretty good. I kind of expected his price to rise today, but he's got a good, nice plus matchup here, and he has a safe floor. He has 50 fantasy point potential, and he'll probably have some games coming up that'll be like that. I expect him to really go for it today, especially with the playoff format. So we'll have to see, obviously, but I do like his upside in this matchup. And then we're also going to look at Kamara for Portland, um, who hasn't had a huge price increase, despite the fact he's played pretty solid the last few games. And with all the injuries, I do expect his minutes to increase here. He did start the last game, but excuse me, um, he did start a game last year. Sorry, but he did have some. What am I doing? Sorry, I'm reading the wrong thing. Um, for Kamara, sorry about that, guys. Let me start this over. All right, so then we're gonna look at Tumani Kamara for Portland. Now he is cheap, and I don't expect him to start. He has played some games recently where he had some good potential, and he's managed to get over 19 fantasy points the last two games, or two of the last three games. With the injuries to the team, he should get a couple extra minutes today, and he has some nice potential as he's rebounding pretty well. So I do expect him to have some utility today. Though he is high risk, high reward, he's kind of a Hail Mary cheap play. You could also consider Josh Richardson and Jimmy Butler at this position. Moving over to our power forwards, um, Jaren Jackson Jr. is in play here for Memphis. He has a lot of utility on this slate. He hasn't been as good as we'd hoped this season so far. His price is also continually to rise, obviously with his minutes and potential production available. But he has hit some big games so far, and he definitely has that utility today, especially in a nice plus matchup against Portland. But I have to stress that his floor is a little bit lower than I thought it would be, based on how he's played so far this year. So I do think he's a great option, but he's still high risk, high reward. Then we're gonna look at Jeremy Grant uh, for Portland. Sorry, he is a core play as well. Um, his price hasn't changed very much, but his usage should go up a bit with the increased injury situation here in Portland. And while he does have a really good safe floor, he's got a decent ceiling, but he hasn't really hit it so far yet this season. So I do like his upside though, and he has a lot of potential. His rebounding has really kind of suffered so far, mostly possibly due to some foul trouble in a couple games, but overall he has some nice upside in this matchup, and he can get over 30 fantasy points here. Like I said, he has a pretty good floor, so he's in play, but he's a little bit risky today. But I do like him as a good option. And then Jalen Williams for Oklahoma City. It looks like his usage should boost today as a result of the situation. His price has also popped up as a result, but he's definitely in play today as he's had some really solid games, and he has a nice ceiling. His floor has actually been pretty good so far this season as well. But if some of the guys start coming back for OKC, that would definitely hurt him some. But right now, he's playing really well, scoring a decent amount of points, and has a good fantasy point production on the slate. Looking at other possibilities at this position, DeMar DeRozan and Michael Porter Jr. are in play as well. Then we're going to move on to center. Jared Jackson is available here, as is Giannis, who I do like today some. Uh, Giannis has some utility here, though he hasn't really had a big game yet, as the seems like uh, the assists have really dropped off so far to start the season. But I expect him to start to, once he gets more used to playing with Lillard, he should pick that back up. His minutes have been a little bit in flux, but that happens for him anyway, so we're pretty used to that. But I'm a little surprised at his lack of rebounding the last two games and assists in general in the season so far. But once he gets acclimated with Lillard, he should be able to pick back up. But right now, his price is still okay, though he does carry some risk. Vucevic looks like a great play today for Chicago against Brooklyn, who really have trouble guarding the big guys so far this season, especially with the Claxton out. He should be able to get a lot of rebounds in this one, and he's had 37 rebounds in the last two games. He has some really nice upside in this matchup, and so I do think he's a viable option here. DeAndre Ayton, Miles Turner, and Nikola Jokic is also in play at this position. So overall, I do think this is a pretty steady position today, better than a lot of days lately, but he has some really good potential today. Then we're going to look at our FanDuel options here. And I'm going to show these here on the screen. So for point guards, Malcolm Brogdon, Josh Giddey, and Donovan Mitchell are all priced pretty fairly on FanDuel. I do think Brogdon is a near must play here on FanDuel as well. Looking at shooting guard, you could also put Brogdon here, but Desmond Bain is cheap enough that he's got some utility, though he's high risk. And Donovan Mitchell is obviously expensive. Now, you could actually mix in Case and Wallace here. The only plays on shooting guard on FanDuel. He should draw the start today, and he's a viable option here where he's not really on FanDuel on DraftKings because his price is so much higher. Looking at small forward, Jimmy Butler comes into play here as he's priced pretty fairly. Jalen Williams is a pretty good price, and then Lou Dort is actually a good value play over here as well, as is Josh Richardson, who's played 2 games so far and hasn't really 5x yet, but he does have some potential on the slate. And then looking at the power forward, Giannis, a little bit pricey, but is in play. Jaren Jackson Jr. is priced pretty fairly. Jerry Grant really does look like a good play on FanDuel as he does on DraftKings. Jimmy Butler, a little bit pricey, but still in play. And then Tamani Camara is also in play on FanDuel, only at power forward instead. And then as for the centers, Jared Jackson Jr., Xavier Tillman is both in play as Tillman's cheaper here on FanDuel. And then Vucevic, obviously a good option, as well as Mobley, though they aren't quite as good as they are on FanDuel. On DraftKings, where they're a little bit cheaper. So, with that said, guys, thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you have any comments or questions, feel free to leave them below. And have a nice day, guys.